It's time to get educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. This is the Dr. Duke Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show. Before we get started, please hit that share button so we can educate more patriots around the country. Today, we start again in Virginia. We ought to just set up a satellite Dr. Duke Show right there, where kids played a privilege bingo game that told them that if they're white, Christian, or have parents in the military, they all benefit from privilege. You heard that right. To be a child of military parents, according to progressives in Virginia, means that you have privilege. This is a difficult one to get your mind around, Katie. Give us the details.
In Fairfax County, their curriculum, I guess, has the students play privilege bingo. Because you always want to play games in school. You know, it helps with the learning, but usually not when it's about privilege. Well, obviously, you know how bingo works. You get 5 in a row or up or down or diagonal. Maybe they're playing 4 corners. I don't know. But according to them, if you are white, you speak English natively, you're able-bodied, mentally healthy, you know, you don't have a speech impediment at all, or if you're Christian, obviously, all these things. And then in the bottom right-ish corner there, you see one that says military kid. Now, I know many people who are in the military, and I know many kids who are children of those in the military, and I know the wives and those actually in the military too. They are not privileged. They go many a time without getting to see their family members because they're deployed for months on end, and so you have one family member who's there to take care of the kids, and the kids don't get to see their mom or dad because, again, they're deployed for months. So how are they privileged in the sense that for this exercise?
I can't think of a single piece of privilege they would have.
The only thing would be that they would, with getting into college and having college tuition paid for.
Oh, because they serve their country.
Yeah, so the kids get to benefit from that.
Take a look at the bingo again, real quick. So. Notice the one in the bottom left-hand corner, the up to never been racially profiled. I got news for you. This stupid bingo game is one big exercise in racial profiling, isn't it? I mean, aren't you profiling people racially in this game? If you are a military kid or able-bodied, if you are cisgender or involved in extracurricular activities, you have privilege? You have your own bedroom? You want to go to college? This makes you privileged? Ladies and gentlemen, this is a walking, talking, breathing, living example of racial profiling being placed on your children.
And if you want to make a quick bingo of it, you go diagonal, top left down to bottom right. Just having, if you speak English and you're a white male who is fine, plus you get your free space because you're privileged. Boom, quick bingo, I guess. Does that mean you lose then? I mean, in bingo you want to win, but does that just make you a loser? What's the winning for winning? Is there any prize? Probably not. Meanwhile, we have Douglas A. Tyson, who's the assistant superintendent, who had to come out and make an official comment from the school because, shockingly, they got some complaints about this activity. But according to Douglas, he says that the screenshot you referenced, to the parents, obviously, that's who he's referencing, comes from an approved FCPS English curriculum. How is that an English lesson?
What does it have to do with English?
Wait, he explains it. That's centered around students selecting a choice test and examining in detail the author's perspective. Oh, the author. Which author? Okay. On a wide range of issues, students are asked in the lesson to read critically and think critically about the author's perspective on several fronts, including the author's privilege. So now we must think of the author's privilege in addition to your being the student's privilege, and then some privilege. The author's privilege that may or may not be present in the work. Students are then asked independently and self-reflectively to juxtapose their thoughts regarding any perceived privilege they think they may have and how they would potentially rewrite portions of the text. Again, Dr. Duke, as an English professor yourself, is it your job you as professor, to teach the children to look at a piece of text and then analyze the privilege of the author so that then you can analyze yourself and your own privilege? Is that how English works?
It is now.
Oh,
that's what they're doing now. They're beginning to add these kinds of requirements at the college level and beyond. They're also now contemplating at universities tying your evaluations as a professor to the degree that you engage in this kind of sociology. It's also dishonest because what you're doing is you're ignoring what the writer reads. Or excuse me, you're ignoring the text that the writer has written, and you're only focusing on the superficialities, right? Because the author happens to be a white man. We want to, as they said, how would you rewrite the text, right? It's interesting. I never once hear them say, if the author was a transgendered lesbian Vietnam vet, how would you rewrite the text in the name of her privilege? Because there's a lot more privilege to being a lesbian Vietnam vet in a wheelchair today than there is to being one of these boring old white dudes. And if you go back real quick to the list of the bingo, Mike, if you could show it again if you like, if you can't get a sense of this. Some of the things are stunning. You're privileged if both of your parents went to college. Well, what if just one did? Given that only 38% of kids in this country go to college, I would think that having one parent, wouldn't you? Why is it two? I think it's because most minority families are single mother families, which is why they don't do that. Do you feel represented in the media? Well, that's an interesting one. Do you feel represented in the media? It doesn't say positively represented, doesn't it? I mean, there are a lot of groups that are being represented in the media for their bad behavior. Hey, publicity's, right? This kind of stuff. This is an English class for a high school. It shows you what they're not doing. They're not reading serious books and having serious conversations.
And it's kind of interesting to note that if you look at a map and know geography, Fairfax County is actually quite close to the Pentagon.
And quite privileged.
And so there are quite a few military families who have students attend these schools. And according to the article that was done by the Daily Wire, they talked about how they collect supplemental funding for educating military families.
They get rewarded.
But many actually refused to turn in the form to give them the extra cash because they're so privileged, I'm guessing is why. Because of the perceived derision of those serving their country or because of frustration with other failures of the school system. There are failures in the school system.
And Fairfax, like Loudoun, is one of the richest school districts in the entire country. All those bureaucrats who run this country and get those inflated federal paychecks send their kids to these schools.
With all the censorship taking place on social media platforms, we've made it easy to keep up with your favorite content. Simply download the Freedom Project Media app in your app store. Get access to 18 new videos a week, plus thousands of archived shows, lecture series, and educational animations. Download the Freedom Project Media app on your Apple TV, Roku, tablet, or phone, and make sure you allow for notifications to keep you informed.
Now, getting the jab, if you're someone who's like 12 years old, and not telling your mom or dad about getting the jab, sounds like something that California would want kids to do. And what do you know? California is actually wanting kids to do said thing. They have a bill, SB 866, and it was introduced by Democratic State Senator Scott Wiener, who is a member of the legislature's Vaccine Work Group caucus. It was a caucus formed to introduce the legislation intended to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 and combat vaccine misinformation. And so in this little bill, SB 866, we're going to call it Wiener's legislation, it would allow for anyone 12 years old or older to get the jab without even letting mom or dad have to consent to it at all. Because, I mean, you're 12, you know what's up in the world. You might as well get the right to vote and drive and drink and smoke cigarettes. Might as well just have it all, because that's what California likes to do.
And why couldn't this be anything else? Because this is where California's going, right? If the California legislature has the ability to do this, then it has the ability to say, hey, we are now giving children sexual emancipation. right? Because that's coming down the road, mark my words. Any child 12 or up has the right to choose any sexual partner of any age group whatsoever, and no problems whatsoever with pedophilia laws, no problems whatsoever with the age difference, and they don't have to tell their parents. This is literally the government of California taking away parental rights right before you without any vote, without any referendum, utterly against, I believe, constitutional norms and values, simply legislating away your power as parents to oversee the health and welfare of your children.
As Weiner said, with COVID, there are a huge number of teenagers not vaccinated, about 1 million, and a lot of them want to be vaccinated. And then he mentioned that teens who aren't vaccinated may be excluded from participating in sports or other extracurricular activities. So what he's doing is dangling that one out there. You want
The
your
carrot
sports.
and the stick.
Look at that one. He also said that when these kids can't get vaccinated, we are preventing them from having the best possible teenage years.
Yes.
Oh, is that what it
Yes.
is? By not allowing them, even though the parents can help decide if they want to, by not just giving them the autonomy and all that to just get the jab, we are depriving them of their
It seems like
years.
Mr. Weiner is really good at grooming little kids. He's got all the right, here, little. Here's some sugar candy for you. Now, if you don't do what I tell you, I'll be very disappointed. Just get in the windowless van and go for a ride with me, because we, not your parents, determine what you are. I love that point that he makes, right? That we want them to be to have the best possible experience.
Yes.
And that means getting a largely untested piece of medicine, if you can call it that, jabbed into yourself, with no regard to what may happen to you in 10 years.
No. I'm sure Weiner is a scientist.
Oh, he
and
must
as
be.
he said, giving young people the autonomy to receive life-saving vaccines, regardless of their parents' beliefs or work schedules, is essential for their physical and mental health. It's unconscionable for teens to be blocked from the vaccine because a parent either refuses or cannot take their child to a vaccination site. Right there, parents, give up your kids to the state. That's exactly what he just said.
Your ability is
Parents,
to look after your own kids is unconscionable.
Unconscionable, I say.
This Weiner's a real...
Yeah, he is. Now, he did make comments about those anti-vaxxers out there. There is a very organized group of anti-vaxxers who are a very small minority in California. They don't even come close to a majority view, but they are very organized, loud and abusive. And I'm sure they will be organized, loud and abusive about this bill. My eyes are wide open that there will be a personal cost to me. But this is about saving lives.
Yes. And it's such a small group that it's so indefinably small, but they're important because even one child, they're so tiny we really should just ignore them and let them be fringe people. But we can't do that because we're the government of California. And we're going to make sure every damn one of your kids belongs to us, and ain't nothing you can do about it.
Today's show is sponsored by our friends at MyPillow. Save up to 66% on all items at MyPillow.com when you use the code Dr. Duke. That's DRDUKE. Support this show by supporting a great American company.
We're going to end on a story that's kind of fun and silly, but also quite sad at the same time, because if you want to know how much money the average American worker person makes, do not ask anyone from the Ivy League, apparently. You would think they're the most highly educated. They should be smart. They should understand this. Well, no, they're out of your league, if you will. Wharton Business School, for the students who attend there, it's at the University of Pennsylvania, where the only Donald Trump went to school. They're basically revealing just how dumb they are because Nina Strominger, who's a professor of legal studies and business ethics at the school, tweeted out some results of a survey she gave to her students. So she asked her students, she said, I asked Wharton students what they thought the average American worker makes per year. And 25% of them, so that's 1 in every 4, thought it was over 6 figures. One of her students thought the average American worker makes $800,000. And she then says, really not sure what to make of this. The real number is $45,000. $800K. How did you get into an Ivy League school? How?
Well, one of the things it tells me is that this explains something. When you look at how we're being, let's be very honest here, who is running the country and has run it for a long time now? It's Ivy League graduates. Disproportionately, our presidents have been Ivy League people for a long, long time now, almost without exception. And certainly post Ivy League graduation, you end up like places like Wharton, right, where you continue your education in a further Ivy League school, or heaven be blessed, you go over to Oxford in England to get your degree, as Slick Willie did. And so what this tells us now, it makes perfect sense. Why is there such a disconnect between what you and I, the average earner, right? People who aren't making $800,000 a year, being garbage men and tax collectors and accountants, right? The misunderstanding of these people. These are the people who will walk into the positions of power and influence all across the country. They will become your politicians and your legislators, and they will become your senators, your congressmen, and even your presidents. And what does this tell us? That they have no connection to you whatsoever. They do not have even the most little bit of empathy, because they don't realize what people in real life have to go through.
I have two responses that I want to read from the many responses that obviously people jumped on this, because this was on Twitter. One person said, Rosie, a 24-year-old Wharton grad. Okay, so Rosie has skin in the game. She went there. She knows what's up. She recalled how my freshman year, I told a classmate I had a full ride to Penn, $80,000 per year tuition, because my parents made only $10,000 a year. And they replied, you're so lucky. I have to pay full tuition because my parents make too much money. Yeah. Yes. Just so everyone knows, the median family income for the University of Pennsylvania is $195,000. That's the median, which means the middlemost. Okay, anyway.
Well, I hope
median mode. We'll talk about it later.
I hope our 24-year-old friend didn't just get the full ride because her parents. Well, I hope she had some, academic chops to back that up.
Credentials as well. Well, she graduated. I don't know what that says.
Well, there you go.
For people like this. But the other response that someone put out was, don't you think business students at Wharton should have to do one of those simulations where they have to live like people on $45,000 for like a week, like live what it would be like? A reality show? That's my pitch. You can take it if you want.
How about,
hey, let's put it out there as a new reality show.
Call it Trading Places. Remember the old Eddie Murphy movie? Where you had Mortimer and who was the other fellow?
Didn't he make a second one?
He did, absolutely. Movie? Yeah, that's
the original could not be made today.
I think we should make it.
Oh, it's such a good
you take some of the highest benefiting, privileged children of the Ivy Leagues and swap them out with people who are 17-year-olds working at Wendy's, flipping burgers. That's a reality TV show I just might be inclined to watch. We are talking all week about classical mythology, those wonderful stories that sort of wind themselves around every aspect of Western culture moving forward. We see them enacted in so many ways in the modern world. It's interesting that when Freud came up with the idea of the subconscious, he almost exclusively talked about it through Greek mythology, how these mythological tropes and images and ideas and stories really, alongside the biblical stories and the biblical mythology, they are the two really tracks on which Western culture was built. So I thought we would take some time to look at more Greek mythology, but look at it through the lens of people who are writing and working and painting and sculpting in the last couple hundred years. And so the one I want to focus on today is The Minotaur is Wounded. And it is a famous lithograph by an artist no less than Pablo Picasso. And so this is really kind of an interesting lithograph. Take a look at the image closer. Now, we should begin by talking about the fact that in Picasso's life, the idea of the Minotaur was a remarkably potent sign. He paints and does lithographs and etches minotaurs over and over and over again over the course of his career. This particular one is one of my favorites. This is The Minotaur is Wounded. It's from Picasso, about 1937. The Minotaur made many appearances in Picasso's work throughout the 30s, such as The Minotaur, 1933, The Dying Minotaur, 1933, The Blind Minotaur, 1934, drawing of a sightless and suffering Minotaur being led along by a flower-carrying young girl resembling the one in another painting also. The mythical Minotaur, as we know, part man, part bull, was Picasso's alter ego through the 1930s, a part of a broader exploration of classicism that persisted in the work of Picasso for many years. And that's not a lot of people realize that who aren't carefully or are serious students of art history. When we think of Picasso, we think of somebody who is breaking away from classical painting, of the painting and the model of the ancients, which was based on naturalism and reality. But nevertheless, despite the radical reshaping of reality and the huge change that Picasso brought to painting through cubism and other distortionary ways of painting, he still incorporates these classical mythological images. You don't get away from them. For Picasso, these images, particularly his Minotaur paintings, express complex emotion at a time of great personal turmoil. The Minotaur symbolized for him lasciviousness, unchecked lust, violence, guilt, and despair. The presence of the Minotaur in Pablo Picasso's oeuvre is not surprising at all, since the bull, as an animal, is the constituent element of Spanish culture in the 1930s. You think about those bull fights and what bullfighting meant to the Spanish people. And for Picasso during the 1930s, as we move into the point of the Spanish Revolution taking place as well, fascism coming to Spain too, and what those images all mean, the Minotaur, of course, symbolized all of that despair and displacement. The artist was fascinated with the rituals related with this animal, from sacrifice to bullfights and the running of the bulls. Aside from its symbolical meaning and the strength and the boldness of the image, the representation of the Minotaur was perceived as the expression of the power of irrationality and the forces of the unconscious. So many wonderful ways we deal with the image here. Now, if you look at the actual picture, you may remember that the Minotaur was a creature that was born out of lust. It was King Midas of Crete and his wife who decided that she wanted to attract a bull as a sexual partner. So she dressed herself up in the skin of a bull, and literally the bull came to her, and the result of that union was the Minotaur, this misshapen creature, half bull and half man. Clearly an amalgam of what happens when our sexuality and our sexual ability to control ourselves sexually is not guided by reason. And if you think about the personal life of Picasso, all of his many women, all of his flirtations, his affairs, all of the really, in many respects, exploitative way that Picasso treated women, even the women most closely to him. I mean, you can see that the artist is not ambivalent. He's not without pain or regret for the way that he has treated women. If you go one more time and look at the picture, you can see the Minotaur here, almost grieving. It seems to have an arrow shot through the heart from the back. And you see who's there in the boat, largely. Some large-breasted women who are there. There seems to be a really profound statement here about women fighting back, and one that would mean a lot to a guy like Picasso, whose reputation and in reality and in idea took women quite lightly and used them in exploitative ways. And is it just me, by looking at that picture, that Maurice Sendak, the great artist of Where the Wild Things Are, might have been deeply, deeply influenced by the paintings of Picasso, in particular, the Minotaur.
And that wraps up this show for Freedom Project. I'm Katie. He's Dr. Duke.
And until next time, stay educated, my friends. We'll try to make it happen.